So, welcome back to Economy of Good. Today, I'll be speaking about pensions with Nest. Nest is the biggest pension in the UK by number of savers. Around 1 in 3 workers save into a Nest pension. That's over 10 million of us. They look after 19 billion of our pounds, and they expect that to go up to 100 billion by 2030. So if you're looking for a greener, cleaner kind of pension, one that uses our money to do good rather than do harm, you're likely going to be looking to Nest to see what they're doing with your money. So I spoke to the lovely Annie Bruzzone, who is head of investment communications at Nest. And we talked about all sorts of things, everything from how they're making sure that they have a positive impact on the world, how they speak to companies who they think might be doing harm. We talk about performance, we talk about overcoming greenwash, and lots of other things. But for this first conversation, we'll be kicking off with the basics. So getting to know Nest, so you know a bit more about the organisation looking after your retirement savings, and just a bit about how and how much money is saved into a pension.
Sure, thank you, and thanks so much for having us on. This is a topic that we're really excited by as well, and have kind of been involved in for 10 years. And I think that's kind of unusual in the pensions industry, who seem to be sort of catching up with responsible investment and things like environmental, social and governance factors. So it's great to see people like you kind of bringing the spotlight on this. So my role is a communications role, and I help the scheme kind of translate investment issues to our membership. But Nest, I like to think of Nest as basically the BBC or the NHS of pensions. We were set up 10 years ago to help millions of people save for a retirement and enjoy a better retirement. And it's actually written into our rules that we've got a public service obligation. So we are there to serve the public. And it's quite hard to remember probably, what the pensions world was like 10 years ago. But if you had a pension at work, you were either probably in the public sector or you would have been quite a lucky and probably quite a wealthy minority. So most people in the private sector didn't have access to a pension at work. And in 2012, the law changed and meant that employers, whether they were employing a nanny or had a workforce of thousands, needed to essentially enrol all of their workers largely into a pension scheme and also put money into their pot on their behalf. So Nest was set up as part of that to really underpin that duty that employers have now got, and mean that no matter who they were, they knew that they would have a scheme that would be there for them, that would be trusted, that would invest their employees' money responsibly and carefully, and would charge them fairly and transparently for doing it. So that's kind of why we came about. And since then, like you said, we've grown to be one of the biggest pension schemes in the UK, or the biggest by membership. About 1 in 3 people in the UK now has a Nest pension pot, workers in the UK. And whether you're a kind of self-employed person, a self-directed single person director, whether you're an employer with a huge workforce or not, we're open to you and we'll be there for you. So and our goal is to get you a bigger pension in a better world, and that's what we're here for.
I love that. Bigger pension in a better world. That's an amazing tagline. A lot of the people that I speak to really just don't understand pensions at all, and it isn't their fault. It's really complicated. It's a really complicated topic. So with the auto enrolment, what happens is people start a new job, their employer will offer them a pension. Quite often it's Nest. Is the employee kind of told about fund choices, and what types of choices do they have?
Absolutely. So if you join Nest, you'll get a welcome pack, which will tell you who we are. It will tell you a little bit about the main fund, which is the fund that people will be automatically enrolled into, and what that's about. And it will also give you a bit of information about our other fund choices. So you're told up front, who we are, what we're about, what's likely to happen with your money, and what the alternative choices are. I think we're again quite unique in the sense of pensions have been traditionally really bewildering, and there's a huge amount of choice. And in the old system, you know, you would have joined a workplace pension scheme and they maybe would have given you a financial advisor to talk you through 1,000 different fund options and pick out for you, you know, which particular stocks you wanted, etc., etc. But you would have had really no clue, I mean, if you were anything like me, like what you would have done, you know, how you would have navigated all of that information. But that's quite off-putting to most people, and it's quite like it almost makes you not take action and not want to do anything. So, and we knew that most people probably wouldn't be making an active fund choice when they joined Nest. I mean, automatic enrolment, as you described, the fact that you need, the fact that the law changed so that employers were bound to put their workers automatically into a pension scheme, it's an opt-out rather than opt-in system, was based on the fact that, you know, a lot of people want to do this, they want to do the right thing, they know that they should be saving for their retirement, but they just, for one reason or another, don't get around to doing it. So that's the same really when it comes to fund choice, and people are put into Nest or other workplace pension schemes like Nest, and largely they're not making many fund choices. And that's the same across the world. That's not necessarily just in the UK, but with Nest, 99% of our members are in our default fund. And so, you know, what we've done is we've focused on making that fund really, really good. So, you know, default kind of implies backstop or not as good. But actually for us, like, it's not our default fund, it's our flagship fund. This is the one where we know most of people are going to be in it, and so therefore it needs to be really, really good. It needs to get the results that members need. It needs to be invested really responsibly. You know, it needs to do all of the things that you would get if you were in a super high class self-selected fund, for example.
Can we remind people what the minimum sort of contribution amount is nowadays?
Sure, yeah. So the legal minimums at the moment are, you have to put in the total contribution that comes out of your salary is 8%. And that works out as 5% from you and 3% from your employer. But within your 5%, that's includes tax relief. So essentially, you only pay, I think it's 4% of that, and the rest is tax relief. And then there's the 3% additional from your employer. So you're essentially doubling your money as soon as you arrive into the pension scheme, because you're putting in 4% and you're getting 4% extra from your employer and the government. And most people are contributing at the minimum. Some people are contributing more, either because their employer is putting in extra or because they're choosing to put in extra, but most people do contribute at that level. And so our assets under management at the moment are 19 billion, and, you know, rising pretty rapidly. So I think we're expected by the end of 2030 to be in the region of 100 billion pounds under management.
All right, so let's start talking about the different funds then. So I'm now saving into a Nest fund. I'm probably in the default fund, but there are other types of funds that I could choose, and they've all got different sort of characteristics. Can you just talk a bit about the differences between the funds that you offer?
Sure. So we've got, our main default fund is actually made up of a range of basically 49 individual funds, each one of them managed for a specific retirement date. So, you know, what that means is that no matter how old you are or what age you are when you join Nest, you're almost in a tailored fund for you and for the point at which you're going to need that money, and the money is managed appropriately for that. So it's quite a lot more sophisticated than a kind of one big massive bucket fund. But you don't really need to know all of that detail. All you need to know is kind of when you think you're going to retire, and that the rest is taken care of it for you. So the other fund choices that we've got are an ethical fund, a Sharia fund, a higher risk fund, and a lower growth fund. So we've kept the range really focused, essentially to meet the needs of most people. So knowing, you know, there might be some religious concerns for why you wouldn't want to be in the normal default fund, and we wouldn't want people to opt out on that basis. So we've provided the Sharia fund. There are also going to be people who've got particular ethical concerns and who really want to invest their money on the basis of their values. And so that's what our ethical fund is for. And then people who might want a little bit more risk or a little bit less risk. So our higher risk fund and our lower growth fund are for them. And again, we've named those funds quite carefully to try and explain on the tin what they do and what they are. Like you'd often get a fund called an aggressive fund or something like that, but it's a bit like, well, aggressive doesn't sound very nice. I don't know what that means. Whereas with the high risk fund, we're kind of trying to tell people, if you're choosing this fund, the thing that you're taking is more risk. So be aware of that when you choose this. And with the lower growth fund, again, things like a cautious or cash fund, like people quite like that, but you need to be aware if you're choosing that fund that what you're giving up is growth. So it's a lower growth fund. So we've tried to name them in a way that people will understand, what they're getting fairly simply from the labels.
Okay, so I'm saving into one of these funds. I've chosen the one that best suits me. So what happens to my money then? Because I think what people imagine happens to their money is that it's kind of put in a vault somewhere and then we're given it back when we retire. But what actually happens to our money when it's saved into one of these funds?
It's a really good question, and actually it's one of the questions that we know people have like the most pressing kind of wanted need to understand. And you're right as well that most people think that pensions work a bit like a bank account, as in you're just kind of putting the money there and it's building up steadily and slowly over time. But actually, that's not quite right. And in a pension scheme, mostly unless you are in a cash fund, the aim of that pension scheme is to grow your money much faster and much bigger than if you were to put it in a bank account or put it under the hypothetical mattress. Investing really is about buying pieces of the global economy, buying into things which, as prices and wages go up over time, are also going to go up in line with that, and hopefully more than that as well. So, we buy bits of shares in global companies, we buy bits of properties, we buy bits of actual, physical pieces of infrastructure like a wind farm or a digital technology grid, and we own pieces of that on your behalf, or you own pieces of that really technically, and then as those things grow in value over time, your money grows in value as well. So it's kind of giving you a share of global growth and the economic growth over time.